Hi everyone, before you dive into the episode, I just wanted to interrupt really quickly. You're gonna dive into this episode and you're gonna hear me call this podcast the Holistic Hustle Podcast. And that is because it used to be the old name of this podcast. And it was an amazing ride. I'm so grateful for the Holistic Hustle Podcast and what it served. But recently I've decided to rebrand the podcast based off the evolution of my own journey, my own story, and where God is calling me to go next. And so now the rebrand, which you may know already, is called Wisdom is Wealth. Didn't want you to be confused, so dive into this episode. They were amazing episode, amazing guests, amazing insights, and enjoy.
You don't need to build a massive team with a commercial real estate spot to build a great business. You can really have a big business with a small team, and I'm a big advocate for that.
Hi, I'm Justin Buonamo, and this is Holistic Hustle. Holistic Hustle is doing things for the right reasons, working hard for the right reasons. The healthy balance of what work and progression and accomplishment and success should actually look like. Welcome back to another episode of the Holistic Hustle Podcast. I have a very awesome guest for y'all today. Somebody who, though we've never met in person, is a big part of my story, particularly my online journey, which we're going to dig in here today. But I have Owen Sammarone, who is an entrepreneur, ferocious reader, and a former Division I basketball coach. He is the founder of Unleash the Knowledge, a community promoting self-education through nonfiction books, and has amassed a following of nearly 200,000 followers in 3 years. Unleash the Knowledge has a branch serving nonfiction authors as a digital marketing agency. Before starting what began as a brand, then business, Owen spent 6 years working in college basketball, all under 2023 and 2024 NCAA basketball coach Dan Hurley at both UConn and University of Rhode Island. Owen was recently featured in Forbes, where his journey from basketball to books to business was highlighted. He loves all things digital business building, audience growth, monetization, and community, and of course, books. And so I found Owen years ago on Instagram. I would say about 5 or 6 years ago now, before JFF even existed, and was one of my favorite accounts to follow. Was a big reader, still a big reader. He just still to this day has an incredible account called Unleash the Knowledge, where like if you're a reader or an author, like go follow him now in the middle of this episode. But back then he has about 200,000 followers now, but back then I think you're at like 20, 30 already. And I was like, and there was no such thing as fake followers back then. And so it was very evident that you were doing this thing and really growing your online presence and just doing a lot of awesome things that just was not the conventional day job. And when I found you, I was in that conventional day job, corporate America, suit and tie. And, you know, I can definitely say, man, that like a big part of my journey was inspired by finding you and then connecting with you and talking with you over the years, even from the beginning days to JFF to now, with this podcast releasing, and it was only right to get my man Owen to come on here as a guest. So Owen, thank you for coming to the show, dude. We appreciate you showing up.
Absolutely, Justin. Well, I appreciate the intro. Appreciate you having me on the show. Yeah, excited for this conversation. It's crazy what 4 or 5 years, you know, what can happen in 4 or 5 years. It can go by in a blink of an eye, but it's amazing the growth that we could both have. So super excited for you, man, with all you're doing, and happy to be on the show.
Thank you, brother. You're just an awesome human being with a lot of awesome background and honestly current endeavors too as well. But I know I'm biased, but I think sports play a really strong role in the success and how we honestly just build our life in totality and continue to operate even after the sports are done. And you've got a heavy background in sports, particularly basketball. And I know a lot of people that listen to this are ex-athletes or like, or are very close to an ex-athlete or maybe even a current athlete still. So can you talk about the role basketball played in your life and building a successful business, but particularly what you learned from working under the legend Dan Hurley? For people that don't know, UConn just won back-to-back national championships in Division I basketball, and Dan Hurley is that coach who Owen worked under for years. And so would love to hear how that played a role in your life in building a successful business.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, the story is super unconventional. Ironic enough, I didn't play high school basketball. I think, Justin, we connected deeply when we first spoke that we were lacrosse players. So lacrosse was my game in high school. I loved the game of basketball my whole life. I had birthday parties at the gym. There's something in New Jersey called Hoop Heaven where you could, bunch of courts and stuff. You could have a birthday party. Loved going to the NBA store in New York City, growing up at a, not too far outside of the city. Being from northern New Jersey, my grandma would buy me matching jerseys and shorts of all the top players. So I always loved the game of basketball, but when you're a freshman in high school and you're 5'4", 110 pounds, it's pretty tough to go try out for the team and actually think you're going to play. So I was pretty discouraged growing up, a pretty insecure kid. Diagnosed ADD, ADHD, was not the greatest in the classroom until I got to college, where I kind of turned things around. But that's kind of a testament to this whole journey, whether it's my basketball career or the work I'm doing in business, or even the specific work of reading books and working with authors. Owen, from day one to year 18, like, you would have never thought that that would be his journey. So I'm a big believer in creating your own opportunities and flipping the switch and rewriting your story to whatever you want it to be, despite what your past kind of shows. So long story short, I got to the University of Rhode Island campus and I saw two angles. I saw I could either smoke pot and drink like everyone else, and I can kind of drain these next 4 years, or I can really figure out how I can make this investment that my single mother was making for me. And I had to really kind of optimize these 4 years to do well in school and kind of just, wring out the towel as best as I could, for another kind of sports analogy. And I knew the basketball team was kind of on the rise. I knew Coach Hurley was from New Jersey, so it was kind of a home away from home for me. And I took a trip down to the Rhine Center, which is where we play our home games. And it's literally like out of a Hollywood movie, where all the lights were off except for the one room with the light on, and the little bell, like a diner bell, was on the table. No one was at the front desk. And I ring the bell and this woman pops out, super startled, from behind, whatever the wall was. And I pretty much inquired about a position with the basketball team. I just knew I loved sports. I knew basketball was a big interest of mine, despite the lack of the athletic ability from a playing standpoint. And I spent every pretty much waking hour in the gym since then. I was a student manager initially. I built a lot of trust with Coach. We won championships when I was at URI. He then got the UConn job. So for any basketball lovers, that that's top 5 program for the past 25 years, if not longer. And obviously number 1 program of the past 2 years, being back-to-back champs. And Coach brought me along as a graduate assistant. But it was really that involvement with Coach and with basketball that really excited me about becoming my best version. I love my dad, but he wasn't so much in my life growing up. My parents are divorced. So I didn't really have that North Star, that core guiding light kind of throughout my childhood and into high school. When I got to college, Hurley really served as that kind of mentor for me. And he was reading books. He was, he had Ryan Holiday and Tim Ferriss on his desk. He was listening to podcasts like Lewis Howes and whomever else. And I was just this sponge to him, and just completely trying to take in all he was about, just how he approached his day to day. And obviously the success speaks for himself. So just like that moment of making that decision at 18, that it's like back against the wall, don't screw up here because we're spending all this money and you're putting all this time and effort, like, let's flip the switch and really make the most out of this experience. Coupled with getting the direction from Coach, obviously being a part of some great success, being around future NBA players. Like, it was just this wild 4-year journey that turned into 6 years, that really kind of set me on the right path. And ironically enough, like, the Unleash the Knowledge brand pretty much was birthed through that experience too, because I was just so drawn to successful people. And I came to realize you're not really born successful. Like, that's when I first learned about the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. I mean, I grew up with old school Italian immigrant grandparents who were pretty much like, this is the way it is. What are you going to change? Which is now a running joke with some comedians. But it was really a moment where I was like, oh my gosh, like, okay, Owen graduated with a 2.8 in high school GPA. Like, you finished college with a 3.65. Like, we can completely change this trajectory for yourself. So that just set me on this wild path of learning and digesting what Coach was doing and all that. And that is 100% flowed into my business career so far. Happy to elaborate on any of those points, but that's kind of been the journey to this point now.
I love that. I knew a lot of those details. I just never knew that you didn't play basketball in high school. I knew lacrosse was your sport. I just figured you were on the basketball team. It just wasn't as prominent of a love. But that is amazing. Like just that hunch, just to like, yeah, I need to be a part of this basketball team. For some reason, God's pushing me to do that. And at the time, Dan Hurley wasn't Dan Hurley. I hate to say it like that. Like he's a great basketball coach to be at the Division I level, even to be offered the UConn job in the first place. But like he hadn't won national championships yet, let alone back-to-back ones, and possibly one, if not two, of the best college basketball teams ever. So what's so cool about that is you got to learn from him and be alongside of him on his come up, right? It's one thing to be alongside Dan Hurley now, which I'm sure is still a great experience, but to be alongside of him on the come up where he was still trying to earn it, was still trying to prove himself, right? Was, still showing probably a little bit of extra grit, right, that it takes to get to the top compared to stay at the top. And I love one of the big things that you learned from him was reading, right, and expanding your mind. And it's funny, the two things that we're talking about here today, reading and then growth mindset versus fixed mindset. I'm reading through Robin Sharma's new book right now, the 8 Forms of Wealth That Money Can't Buy, or something along those lines. And the books this morning, the chapters, excuse me, one was on growing into a growth mindset instead of a fixed mindset. And the other one was like him just begging us to read as much as you possibly can and educate yourself. And it's just so timely. And that's definitely no coincidence. And I was going to ask you, the question was, the mass amounts of reading that you started to do podcast wise, as you learned from Dan Hurley and on your journey, did that have to do with the growing of the brand of Unleash the Knowledge? And it sounds like it did. It sounds like it did. And I love how in your bio you mentioned starting a brand that led to a business. That really, I hung on to that, right? And I think for many reasons, but can you explain to people how that happened and really help specify the difference between a brand and a business? Because I think a lot of people, they might pretend like they know, but like they don't know specifically. I think there's some clarity that's needed around that concept. Right. I think you did a beautiful job of building a brand that then turned into a business and, can speak from that in a really good manner.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, the brand began on September 14th, 2019. That was the first post. I was wrapping up what would be my last college basketball season, and I was going into my last semester as a graduate student because being a GA, you have to be in school to hold the position. So I was balancing a lot. I was balancing a finance risk management curriculum while working a whole lot of hours in the basketball gym, and even knowing myself, like I'm not a very gifted analytical person. I'm definitely more of a communicator, a marketer, a messaging guy versus knowing all those nitty-gritty numbers. So it was really quite the experience to kind of blend those two together. But yeah, essentially, the brand began simply with two main things in mind. One, it was really just to share what I was reading, kind of have almost like a digital vision board or like a digital kind of database where I could share the insights and the books I was reading. But then the second piece was to build a community of like-minded people. Now, obviously, Justin, we've connected really deeply just based off us kind of being a similar person of wanting more out of our life. And there's nothing against the 9 to 5 or the corporate angle. I don't want to be anyone that kind of craps on that. But I've always known from a pretty young age that I was not really someone who was just going to go work a job for 40 years and kind of cash out and that's life. Like I've always almost been willing to make 20K a year doing whatever I want to be doing than making 100K a year doing whatever else, doing something for someone else. Now, granted, money can translate pretty well when you do work for yourself, so it's the best of both worlds. But I was really trying to build a community. I love the kids I grew up with. I'm still friends with a lot of my high school buddies and my college buddies, but I came to realize that I was definitely this outcast when it came to like having these big ideas and wanting to build a business or wanting to build something larger than life and working on unique projects. So that's kind of how everything started with the brand. I was really building this kind of community of people that wanted to self-develop, wanted to read books, etc. And then how it kind of came out to be a business was, fast forward to January 2020, 3 months prior to COVID, I was still in basketball, again, entering almost our postseason. And a heart surgeon from New Jersey reached out to me over DMs. And I was at, as you kind of mentioned earlier, I was probably at 30,000 followers by then. So I grew decently fast in about 6 months, 0 to 30K, I believe. And he was like, hey, man, you got readers following you. I'm a new author. What's your rates to get my book in front of your audience? And I was like, what the heck are you talking about, man? I work in basketball. I'm just doing this for fun. Like it was truly just a passion, kind of fulfilling play for me just to kind of share what I was reading, just with the mentality like, hey, I could read the books and I could share the insights, save you time. Maybe you don't have to read the books, but you can still gain the insights from me. And that's the light bulb moment. That's when I was like, oh my gosh, like I have, you know, this attention. I have these eyeballs. And that's kind of got me into thinking, oh, that's why Super Bowl commercials are $5 million because they have a lot of eyeballs. So I had this very niche audience of readers that I could then work with authors. They would pay me and I could then share their books in front of the audience. So that's how it became a business. It was never, even though I was entrepreneurial, there was never no clear cut path to kind of building a business. I knew there was something maybe working here, but that was really the moment. And credit Brian Lima, who's the author, who I haven't spoken to in a while. And I should probably circle back and thank him because he really kind of got things started for me. So that's truly kind of how the story of brand to business kind of came about through that first sale. And actually, and I remember it was like a $200 sale. I went in my Apple Notes app and I just made three tiers. It was like 150, 200, 250. I had no idea anything about pricing, anything about even selling an offer. I knew nothing. Like I was literally such a beginner. And he chose the middle package, which I think is a sales tactic we can dive into. But it was funny how that played out. And that's really good what got things got started. But then to your other question, kind of what's the difference between brand and business? I mean, I think they're obviously correlated to some extent, but I think the brand is more I see brand more as like a substitute for almost community. I really push this word community a lot. I think like those that wear your logo or tell people about the brand you work with or what you've created is more of like your ambassadors. It's what people say when you're not in the room. It's your lasting image. And then of course the business is, I think, honestly, in very black and white terms, it's just how you make money. It's the model of how you can actually give value and then earn dollars in return. So, and I like the journey I've taken. I think the idea that the brand was created first and then the business came out on its own really kind of allowed me to have strong integrity about what I was doing. I wasn't just looking for the quick money play. Obviously, it's a longer route. Like to build a brand definitely takes time before you decide to make money, but nonetheless, you could obviously go either way. But I think building the brand is something any business owner should really hone in on. I'm building this core community, this core group of people who can tell others about your work and obviously be your true ambassadors.
I love that because it reminds me of the quote that income follows impact. And you got into Unleash the Knowledge initially for impact through wanting to share for several different reasons and also build community because your sports background really showed you what a quality community of like-minded individuals around you can do for you. And it's like, oh, I don't play this sport and or coach it anymore. I need some people around me that have common interests. Well, I like all these books. I'm sharing them anyways. And I feel like because you started with the impact in mind, and we're very genuine about it, the income started to follow. And I just love that, like, just out of left field, some possibility to now turn this brand into a business through somebody asking you for prices is kind of how that transition was made. And I think I have a very similar story where I was helping people behind the scenes for a while with their finances, friends and family, creating them a budget just like I was using for free just because I wanted to help. And then all of a sudden, my first ever client, who's been an incredible ambassador for us, Kelly Brock, came out of left field and she's like, I want to hear about your program. And I remember word for word, I didn't say this to her, but I said it out loud. When I read the text, I was like, what fucking program? I got nothing. Same thing. Threw something together on an Excel sheet, sent it over, and one thing led to another, man. And so I think that's what I want people to take away from that is many things. Definitely the difference between brand and business, which was awesome. But like, really just get started. You build the plane as you fly it, right? If you got a hunch that you're meant for something greater out there, God's calling you to do something different than what you're doing or what other people are telling you should do, just put one foot in front of the other, right? Take that first step and the next one will reveal itself. And so I think that you just have a perfect testament to that, which led into a very successful business, right? And so business wise, what are some results that you have seen your clients achieve and what are some opportunities you have for other people to work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I loved all those points you made there. I mean, just to kind of add one more piece, like culture is a
Right.
big part too. That's a big thing that I learned through basketball that when you get everyone in a room on the same mission in the same direction, really good things can happen. And when you're building a business, especially an online business like we're doing, or maybe those listening, you're really it's lonesome. You're looking at a screen all day. Like there's no real community or culture. So you have to build that community yourself and go find people on social. Now, the way I did it was I like literally build the brand with that intent, which you could totally do as well. But if that's not just the business model or whatever you're creating, that's fine. But you could go on social and you could find so many of the people that are doing good work that you can band with. I'm sure obviously Kelly and you have been great partners with bouncing ideas off each other. I don't exactly remember what she does, but I think she is in the finance space to some degree, or at least like money mindset. So you have that great connection there too with her that I'm sure has been amazing. But um, yeah, to your question. So yeah, for literally the duration of the business up until maybe a couple months ago, we've been so focused on helping specifically nonfiction authors essentially market themselves, have a stronger digital footprint online to sell more books, get more speaking engagements, and get more coaching and consulting clients. So we have three offers. One, we have a book promotion service where we set up authors with a 30 or 60-day campaign, fully done for you. They don't lift a finger. Essentially, we have three NFL stadiums of readers that we can call upon with our audience, our 100, almost 200,000 person audience. We can go kind of convey their book insights and advocate for what they've produced with their book and send traffic to their Amazon page. So that's been one of the core offerings that's pretty much kept the business alive for the past 4 or 5 years. I then created a coaching program about a year and a half ago that helps authors actually build a high ticket coaching business themselves. So I came to realize that the book itself is not going to make you rich. It's not going to make you a ton of money. I much rather see someone chase a $5,000 deal or a $10,000 deal over a $5 sale or a $15 sale from a book. And you can charge that same person either of those options. So obviously it's a way better play to go with the higher ticket route. So that's been a very successful offering as well, coaching people through that. And then lastly, we have a LinkedIn content writing and growth service where we actually will write content for you on LinkedIn in particular and essentially turn your profile into a client attraction magnet to get the right people in the door. And then you can nurture them for whatever else, your high ticket services, et cetera. And I mean, the results have been really awesome. I mean, happy to share some numbers where we've helped people go from 0 to 50K, 0 to 70K. People that were never crossing 10K get to 20K months consistently. I just actually had my first client go from 0 to 100K in 7 months. So the fastest route with no prior offer, not much of a brand. He had a couple books. He's actually younger than me, funny enough, and he's been able to create $100,000 business from the consulting offer we developed together. And then he followed my process to get leads and close them, etc. So that's been awesome to see those numerical wins, but honestly, the fulfillment of just helping people blast through the stuckness or give them the clarity that they deserve on what they're trying to do has really been one of the most fulfilling and exciting parts. And it's helped me too. I've reworked my offerings and stuff and my messaging, and now we're kind of tapping into a little bit of a more broader market with this new school community that we just launched a couple of days ago. I mean, at the time of recording this, it's $5 a month to get in, so I've dropped the barrier to enter extremely low. July 5th, right after July 4th, we'll bump it up to $27, and then maybe by the time of people hearing this, we'll be up to 100, if not more. So essentially, I'm just trying to broaden my net of who I could help and kind of grow beyond the author. We'll still have those service options because we've built quite an authority in the author space, but I've realized that a core piece of my work is really around marketing messaging. That's where the zone of genius I've kind of grown into, and how to kind of stop the scroll, how to get people, excited about what you have to offer. And that's applicable to any industry. So that's probably the 5-10 year plan down the road for me to kind of really kind of broaden my market there. But yeah, it's essentially the business has been predominantly authors for the most part here. And we're excited about next steps to broaden who we're trying to help.
Yeah, it's phenomenal because people pay for solutions, right? And I think a big problem with authors is they've got a great message, right? They've got a great book, they've got a great heart and great intent, but they just don't know how to run the business side of being an author, right? Whether that's, the marketing, the book, the sales of the book, right? And or just the opportunities that come from that, because really all books are, I mean, again, not all of them, but a lot of books are just the first stop in a funnel that somebody can experience you and your wisdom from. And most times you close a book, and if they don't have another book, right? The reader is like, well, I want more of Owen, or I want more of this author, and they got nothing else going on. You're leaving a lot of money and impact on the table. And so I just think that, your services have just helped authors so much, like really get their message out there, but also get the most fulfillment and income that they can get in the process. And that there's nothing wrong with that. If anything, that's the pinnacle probably of what a lot of authors want to achieve. And so when it comes to the school community though, like, is that just for anybody? Like who's your target demographic for that?
Yeah, the school community, we're super focused on truly anyone that wants to build an online brand. Essentially, what I've done with Unleash the Knowledge, I'm now downloading to anyone to consume. And I've also taken a lot of stuff from my one-on-one coaching, which has people have enrolled for anywhere from 5K to 7,500 to 10K to get this knowledge. And I'm taking bits and pieces of that and putting into this community. So the value is 100% there. There's over $11,000 worth of value in there right now for $5 a month. And even if it's 100 or 200 bucks, I think still it's an amazing deal. And I think one great thing about what school's doing is they've harnessed the community aspect tremendously. And that to this whole conversation, you could tell how big I am on community. So it really is it's checking all the boxes for me. But yeah, essentially anyone that is looking to either start a side hustle or grow the thing that they're building right now, and they want to build a brand online, and they more or less want to be handheld throughout the process and grow an audience, monetize the audience, and then launch offers. And then I kind of call it building your freedom business, because that's a core piece too of why I've done what I've done. Just to be able to do whatever you want on any given day. I think that's every entrepreneur's dream. I think in the world we're living in today, you don't need to build a massive team with a commercial real estate spot to build a great business. You can really
Yeah.
have a big business with a small team, and I'm a big advocate for that. So that's kind of the whole vision behind this community. It's called Unleash the Knowledge, so it's named after the main brand, but it's definitely geared more towards the person who wants to take more control of their life and wants to launch a presence online, whether it's a personal brand or a faceless brand like I got started with. I didn't show my face for the first 6 months because I was afraid I was going to get fired from basketball when I was doing it behind the scenes. So it's totally viable to go either way. But we're going to help you with your reader research, understand who your ideal client is. We're going to help you get your offer straight. We're going to talk lead gen, content creation, sales, fulfillment, the whole deal. It's really every day I keep adding a new module to the classroom, and I probably need to slow down because I should find ways to have maybe, I don't know, I don't want to overwhelm people per se, but we have a little bit of a system right now where you can actually submit a credit every month. You get one credit a month, which translates to one class. So a bunch of the classes are locked. So if you go through the core curriculum and then by month two, you want to unlock, say, I don't know, you want to launch a podcast, which is something I've done twice now. We have a module on there that you can go learn how to launch your podcast. So yeah, we're excited. It's super early still. As of right now, we have 14 members, so we're really just getting started. But I have a crazy goal to reach 500 by the end of this month, and we're trying to attack that every single day. But yeah, the ideal person is truly, if you're working a 9 to 5, if you've already transitioned into being an online coach or consultant, and you know that building your digital footprint can easily translate to more dollars and more eyeballs on your stuff, then this community is a good place for you to hang out.
Phenomenal opportunity. And I hope for $5 an hour for all of that damn value you just listed off of that, 500 people are smart enough to sign up for it by the end of the month, dude. So that's super valuable, man. And speaking of value, you just provided so much for the audience today, dude. And we really appreciate it. So where can people find you and connect?
Yeah, so Unleash the Knowledge, spelled as it is. We're on every platform. Instagram is our largest presence. You could DM me. I'm pretty quick to DMing. We do have team members in the DMs too, so you might not reach me in particular, but you'll reach somebody on my team, and then they can get in contact with me. But outside of that, Twitter and LinkedIn under my personal name, Owen Sammarone, have been my two main platforms. You probably have a better shot of reaching me on Twitter for whatever reason. LinkedIn DMs get a little crazy. So yeah, if you want to get in contact, you can reach out on the brand or through my personal brand, but I'm pretty receptive. I'll get in touch with you and happy to help whoever might need help or will have any questions, happy to answer them.
Well, thank you for that, bro. And I urge anybody listening to reach out and connect with Owen, as he's mentioned here many times today, like community and surrounding yourself with the right people is so important. And I promise you, Owen is one of those people that's just going to bring higher energy, creativity, big ideas, and, depending on how close you get to him, push you to, that next level that you're looking for. And he ultimately did that for me in my story, all the way back to the Johns Hopkins days. And just seeing what he was doing online, the way he held himself and interacted with me and other people, it really inspired me, man. And a big part of, the success that I've had. So it's been an honor to have you on, Owen. Thank you for coming to the show, brother.
Absolutely. Justin, thanks so much for having me on the show. Again, it's been incredible watching your journey. You're crushing it. You're doing better than I am. So I'm super excited to see all the things you have to come. But again, it's incredible that, we might be super ambitious and we want everything done tomorrow. And you made one note there to just kind of, do put one foot in front of the other, keep stepping things forward. And that's what business is. That's what growth is. But then when you look back and you reflect over a 4 or 5 year period of time, you're like, oh my gosh, a lot can happen. So I'm super thrilled, and I'm sure you are too, for the next 4 or 5 years, to look back and see, look back at this conversation and see where we're at in the future.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And speaking of this conversation, for anybody listening, right, follow Owen, reach out to him, and also download, subscribe, and share this episode. If you know, like I always say, if you know anybody that would benefit from this episode, please share it. I think that's how Owen and I got started, sharing content, sharing podcasts, and ultimately with our circle of people too as well. And I think the wealthiest people know you can get wealthy on your own, but you get wealthy a heck of a lot faster when you help other people in the process gain and build their own wealth. And a big part of that is sharing knowledge and content like this. And so I appreciate all of you listeners wise. Owen, again, thank you for coming to the show, and we'll see you all on the next episode of the Holistic Hustle Podcast.